All right, we are recording. And hi, this is Travis Chepkema, President of Church Casualty Insurance Agency. We're happy to bring to you Frank Sommerville, attorney with WKPZ out of Arlington, Texas, a legal expert in the realm of houses of worship. And you guys are all going through a really unique time right now with COVID-19, and it's an ever-evolving situation. We're talking on Wednesday, March 18th, 2020, as we speak, and I'm happy to have Frank here with us. Frank and our agency have partnered for quite a few years, and he is a legal resource for us and for you, and we'll discuss that at the end. I did want to put in one quick announcement about Church and Casualty. We are fully open and operational for business, so it's business as usual. There are 90+% of our staff are working from home right now. I'm sure like many of your staff, but we are accessible. So just wanted to put that out there. And with that said, I will let Frank take it away. So we'll start with the first question that we have here. How can the church reduce its risk?
Well, churches have a duty to act responsibly, and that means that they need to respond to known risks and do what they can to minimize those risks. So what you have is, first of all, you have the health authorities, federal, state, local, city, county, that are imposing different requirements on meetings, and now it's down to 10 or less. So you can reduce your risk by, first of all, abiding by all of those pronouncements from whatever health authority that is in the government. And then you need to protect your staff and your employees, your volunteers, by having the same sorts of things that they talk about in personal protection. You know, hand sanitizers, frequent hand washing, maintaining distance. So those are the kinds of things that churches need to do. They're going to need to reduce or eliminate large scale gatherings. And lots of my clients are doing it for a variety of ways. A lot of them have gone to live streaming or some sort of online meeting process. Other churches have met in much smaller groups. I had a church last weekend that met in various Sunday school classrooms to keep it from being a larger group. And at that time, the size was a lot bigger than 10. They're not going to be able to do that now. Many churches have small groups and meeting in homes, a small group of leaders. All of those kinds of things help to keep you compliant with the health requirements that are out there, and also maintain connections. You know, one of the things my home church is doing is we've activated our prayer teams, and our prayer teams are reaching out to every single family every week to see what they need, how they can pray for them. And this is an all volunteer effort. This is not staff members that are doing it, so that the church can be responsive to those members who can't get out because of the virus, that need food. We have a food pantry. We're going to be delivering food. If they have other needs, then we can help them as well. So don't think that the church has to eliminate the personal touch and caring for those that need it the most. But you need to avoid the large group gatherings.
Great, great. What about third parties that are meeting at church facilities? Let's say they're not gathering as a group for worship, the church itself, but they're still having third parties lease those facilities out.
Many churches lease out their facilities because they want to be a center of community activity. This is not a time for you to be the center of community activity. First of all, we strongly recommend, and have for years, that you have a written agreement with those third parties. Even if it's $1 a year, you need something that will allocate the risks between you and that tenant. So if you don't have a written agreement in California, it's automatically tenancy at will, which means you have to give them 30 days before you can do anything. If you have a written agreement, they should have something called a force majeure clauses, which says if you have a circumstance like what we're talking about, then the agreement can be canceled immediately. And so what you want to do is notify all those third-party groups, comply with your contract, whatever that tells you to do. If without a contract, you need to tell them you're canceling their access to the facility, and then you're going to take the liability risk because you have violated California law, but you need to do that. Hopefully, the orders that we're getting from the health officials will help you avoid any responsibility. Then you also need to take some steps to affirmatively prevent them from meeting at your campus. So that means locking the doors, putting signs out saying no one is authorized to enter, so that you are not having them meet on your facilities that exceed the health guidelines.
Good advice. Thank you. Yeah, so as we speak here today, Wednesday, March 18th, the CDC came out with gatherings of 10 or less, or 10 or more. It shouldn't happen. So we had, for the first time in history, for a lot of churches and houses of worship not meeting last Sunday, because of the 50 or more recommendation that was imposed as of Sunday, but then as of Monday, the 16th of March, it was down to 10. So this weekend is going to be a lot is going to change, and for many houses of worship out there. So with that said, now that many aren't meeting, sometimes the horse has kind of already left the barn regarding exposure that may have already happened. So let's jump into that. And the next question is, how do we address the situation when an attender or family member of an attender contracts the virus?
Well, I think that's very unfortunate, but we've already seen that happen in numerous churches across the country. So I think you need to communicate with that attender or the family member, talk to the attender and say, don't come to church, period. If you have elderly or high risk individuals that have pulmonary problems or serious health risk, or over the age, and I've seen numbers of 60 to 65, those people need to be staying home, period, even from your small 10 or less group. Now, if they came to church last Sunday, for example, or the Sunday before last, when you last met together, you need to determine who they may have been exposed to. You'll need to work with your county or city health officials to determine who they may have exposed. It's going to be very different from someone who just came and sat on a pew for a service than someone who was volunteering in one of your ministries. So you need to look at those situations. If it's someone who just attended the service, nothing more than a generic email out to your congregation saying, we had someone who attended services on such and such a date. They later have been found to have the coronavirus, and we're just letting you know that you may or may not have been exposed, because we don't know where they sat, or we don't know what exposure they had. If they are a volunteer in one of your areas, then you need to contact those individually also and let them know that they may have been exposed. You have to be careful balancing the privacy of the individuals in that family with the greater good of the entire congregation. HIPAA does not apply to churches in most cases because they're not healthcare providers. HIPAA provides that you have to keep it private if you're a healthcare provider or funder. And except for administration of certain employment plans, churches are not governed by HIPAA for their member medical deals. So but that doesn't mean that you should be spreading it around either. And so what that means is that you're likely not going to name the individual in your email communications. You may give a little more descriptive, like the age of the person or something like that. But the main deal there is to alert others so that they can determine whether or not they have been exposed. if people call you and ask questions about it, I would not reveal the name of the family, but I would reveal some other details that perhaps might be helpful to the individuals in assessing their own personal exposure. So, for example, we had a church Sunday before last. One of their greeters, he was diagnosed this past week with the coronavirus, and so he greeted a lot of people. And so, they sent out the email saying one of our greeter team has been diagnosed, and if you attended the service that he worked on this date, please, we want to let you know that you may have been exposed.
Yeah, good. We had a popular mall nearby our office here that had a worker at one of their stores contract the virus, and the mall said they would not name the store, but it happened at the mall. So it's kind of the same analogy with the church. It happened at the church, but we're not going to tell you where or who it exactly happened to. So yeah, good advice there. Thank you. Now let's switch gears and go to an employee situation. How do we address the situation when an employee or an employee family member contracts the virus?
Well, at this point in time, you should be proactively addressing the situation with your employees, which means you're requiring employees to work from home if they have that capability. You're requiring the employees that can't work from home, such as facilities people, that they work in socially distant positions. So if someone's cleaning in one building, that doesn't mean that they have to have 10 people with them. You could spread them out. And have the hand sanitizers and other things to get through this. Most of my churches have dismissed most of their staff through the end of March to evaluate what the situation is, whether they've been exposed or not. But if you have an employee who has contracted the virus or a family member, then you need to send an email out to your staff saying, we have had an employee who has contracted the virus or has a family member who has contracted the virus, and you may have been exposed. And we are monitoring the situation. What you would do, the employee needs to spend at least 14 days at home, and they need to be fever-free for at least 24, 48 hours without the assistance of any medications. If the employees that would work in that same department or come in close contact with that individual also need to be self-quarantined into their homes for the next 14 days because they may be a carrier and not aware of it. One of the statistics I saw yesterday said that 86% of the people who are carriers have no idea that they are carriers. And that's one of the problems with the spread of the virus as well. So those that are in that department or those that would have come in close contact with them, then you need to make sure they self-quarantine. You need to be examining your sick pay policies. Congress is considering mandatory paid sick pay. The House has passed a version. The Senate is working on it. I hope that we'll have a bill by the weekend, but there's no telling with Congress how fast or how slow they will move. But you need to be prepared that the House version that passed requires employers under certain circumstances to add 14 days of additional paid time off for employees that are infected with the virus or have a family member that's infected with the virus. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like in the final version, but and it's stratified for less than 50 employees and more than 500 employees. So there are different categories that it goes into, but you need to examine what precautions you take in providing a sick pay benefit to your employees. The proposed bill also has new rules for the Family Medical Leave Act as well, and so making some or all of that compensatable. So right now, the Family Medical Leave Act doesn't require you to pay them when an employee is off. Under this proposed bill, that would change. So I think you also need to be proactive in cleaning your facility, deep cleaning your facility frequently, at least daily. All hard surfaces need to be disinfected on a daily basis, and perhaps more frequent than that. You need to, once you have your employee in isolation and those other employees in isolation, don't forget about them. Try to help them work from remotely if they feel like it, and stay in contact with the church and let them know your expectations regarding that, because it's tough. It's going to be tough enough on a lot of our employees, because especially the hourly employees, because they live paycheck to paycheck typically. And you have, I know we have a lot of churches that the health departments have asked them to keep their daycares open during this period of time to allow healthcare workers and government workers that have to work to continue to serve the community. And so you're going to have some employees that are still working in that circumstance, but and are exposed because they're dealing with the public. You have other child care worker situations where you're going to have to let them go, and you need to think about, how do we approach this with honor and respect? How do we take care of the people that have helped take care of us, and think about the different ways that we can approach that situation within the financial realities of the church, because many churches these days are experiencing a reduction in contributions last Sunday, because they typically receive a substantial part of their giving through the Sunday worship services. And since those did not happen, not all of those funds are moving over into online giving. So you need to think about the financial constraints. None of us know the situation. One of the things I would tell you about your office and your employees is, if your local school district is shut down, that creates a hardship on the family, that creates a hardship on your employees, and how you're going to address that. And so you need to be proactively thinking about it. And I would say, make decisions short term, not long term. Don't cancel everything out till July, but look at what the situation is on at least a weekly basis, probably twice a week, to determine what do we need to adjust, what do we need to change in light of the healthcare announcements that are coming out almost on a daily basis.
Right, right. Very good. Thank you so much, Frank. This is such great information, and it is a fluid situation. I've been insuring houses of worship for over 23 years, and you've been giving legal representation and advice to them for way longer than that. And I think we could both say we've seen it all. And then this pops up. So this is new and unique and fluid, and but Frank's on top of it, and we want to be on top of it as much as possible for you guys. And so just to let you know that for Church and Casualty customers, you have access to Frank and his team at legal@ccia.com for legal advice. Just to make you aware of that. That's for Church and Casualty customers. That's a value-added service that we provided for years. And if you have any other questions regarding this, you can always reach out to us at hello@ccia.com. So with that said, Frank,
Travis,
yeah, go ahead.
we don't provide legal advice, but we'll provide them with legal information.
Legal information. I always screw that up. So thank you for clarifying. I'm not a lawyer. Legal information, not legal advice. So there is some legal information. So we've got that disclaimer out there. Thank you, Frank, for cleaning that up for me. I'll get that right one day. Frank, thank you again. Appreciate your time. And again, reach out to us, folks, if you have any other questions or concerns. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.